Hey, welcome to my series, Let's Learn Git, No Excuses. It's going to be a multi-part series that explains how to use Git and some of the best practices around version control. But here in part one, I just want to talk about why Git exists and what Git even is to help anybody that's brand new piece together why did we put it together this way and some of the fundamental first principles that we're going to build on later. So let's look at why Git exists first. We've all been in this situation where we rename the same document time and time again, revision one, revision two, revision three, and start adding and making longer and longer names. Uh, this is not a great way to manage which version of a document we're actually on. While it's getting better, shared drives have this tendency to overwrite things, that if someone's changed a file and someone else changes that same file, they can overwrite those revisions very easily. And it's kind of hard to track over time. And apply this to a lot of documents at once, and it's really a nightmarish thing to live through. And we've all been here if we've ever done web development. This is the white screen of death. We've done something that just doesn't work and it wipes out everything. So we need a way to, let's go back in time to where we know it worked. And we could go back with Command Z or Control Z, and that's a great tactic. And if you mistype something, of course, change it locally. But if we put something in production and it breaks there, ooh, we need a much better strategy to roll back quickly. But I don't want to think that this is just for developers. I want to tell you about Git. Git is this version control system, and this is directly from Wikipedia, that lets us handle any kind of project where we type something, save it, make changes, and save it again. And that's really the idea. While it is a command line, and I don't want you to be freaked out by this, it even says in the manual, it's the stupid content tracker. And if you keep that in your head, you're always going to be a step ahead of Git. Git's can be fairly complicated, but don't worry. There's a lot of documentation. There's a lot of training materials out there, and I know you're going to get it if you just persevere. So why did we build this system to manage complex projects? Well, in 2005, Linus Torvald was building Linux, and he was working with hundreds of people around the world, eventually thousands of people around the world. And as you can imagine, a code base that has a lot of hands working on it, it's kind of hard to manage that many text files, because at the end of the day, that's all we're really talking about is managing text files on a computer. So there's a quote I'm going to paraphrase from Linus Torvald that said, "The smartest thing I ever did was actually hand the project of Git over to Junio." He's the maintainer to this day, and you can go read his work out on GitHub. But these two gentlemen, Linus and Junio, developed this thing that let a knowledge worker, and that's an idea that IBM came up with in the 60s and 70s. A knowledge worker is anybody that works with items that can be saved, modified, and saved again. It's not just for developers. So if you are a writer, if you're a content creator, if you just like typing, this is a really good system for you to know, and it can have some long-term benefits, which we'll talk about later in the series. But the basic idea, again, is a document is created, is saved, edited, and then changes are saved over time. We want to give the user a way to track every one of those modifications and include a history of the state of the document before and after those modifications. And then the exciting part is we can actually give the author of those changes a way to explain themselves, to communicate to the world that this is what I did and this is why I did it outside of the code itself. So kind of a commentary on what's going on. But really though, we're talking about entire projects, and software projects can get really big. If you look at the source code for even a small piece of software, there are probably a lot of files in there. Now this might seem really complex, but the basic idea of Git is that we can save changes going forward in time, so we can then travel back in time to modify those changes, branch off into parallel universes where we can work and make additional changes, and then merge those changes back into the main timeline or the main reality that we're dealing with for that code base. That's what seems a little tricky, I know, but one of the great things about Git is that it is graphical based. You can always draw a picture of what's going on. Now, this is a complex situation here. I pulled off a random image from the internet, but this is really easy to read. You just follow the dotted lines, literally, and read the comments along the way. Everything is local with Git. This is one of the weirder concepts that you'll run into, and this is starting to get into some background knowledge of, we're about to start using it in the next video. But understand that everything we do is local. Now, we can put Git on servers. We can put Git on machines somewhere else in the world. That's true. We'll talk about how those things relate to each other, the copy on your machine and the copy on someone else's machine. But from Git's perspective, again, Git's the stupid content tracker, everything is local, everything. And if we always see it from the perspective of a local machine, it makes it easier to grasp some of the concepts. Git is extremely lightweight. If you have a 10K file and you make a change to it and then push that entire file over SFTP, you have to push the whole 10K of that file. If, on the other hand, you have a 10K file that's already deployed somewhere and you make a couple changes to it, then all you have to push are the deltas, those changes that got made across the wire. Not the whole 10K, just the few K or even the few bytes that did get manipulated. Now, I will warn you, while Git is an awesome way to manage your code over time, it's not truly designed to be a backup tool, especially when we're talking about web tech. With web technologies, we tend to have database connections, configuration files that we probably don't want to version control for sake of safety with passwords and whatnot. And we got to think of Git as just a way to manage the code parts of what we're doing. Now, all we're doing is code. Yeah, it actually does work as a pretty good backup tool. But if we involve other systems like databases, yeah, we're going to need to think of some other strategies. And again, this is a really well documented thing. There's a lot of things you can just Google, like, I want to learn Git, and it will point you in the right direction. So this is part one. Next, we're going to roll up our sleeves, install Git, and get going.